Welcome to City Corner, an ongoing program where we talk with City Council and staff about what's going on in our city. Today's program is all about public safety. Hello, I'm Hollie Logan, and joining me today is Richland Police Officer Rick Kane. Welcome, Rick.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here today. So, I wanted to start off with asking you what the strategy or mission is of the Richland Police Department on keeping our citizens safe.
That's a great question. Recently, as a lot of people know, we've talked about in the past about PARSTAT, which has been our philosophy towards keeping track of what's going on in the city of Richland and how the officers use that towards their ability to help not only fight crime, but then also use that for future advances, maybe where we might see crime coming in the future. Now we use a stratified model of policing, which is we think is better because it involves all levels of the organization. So what that basically means, if an officer sees an issue going on in their community that they're policing, they can bring that up with their other squad mates that work those zones, and they can come up with a plan to help fight that. So in essence, like vehicle prowls in an area. They can come up with a game plan if they realize there's an issue, and then there's levels throughout the organization that will help us solve that. We can incorporate traffic, street crimes, community services for a public outreach. So it works really well, and it's new to us, but it's definitely paying dividends.
Okay, great. Well, speaking of public outreach, what is RPD's community outreach strategy, and why is it important for citizens to really take ownership in our police department?
Another great question. For us, we have a community services division that I'm currently in that position, and our goal is to get out there and talk about things such as Neighborhood Watch. We work with, just yesterday I had a crime-resistant community living class to landlords, to 35 landlords and realtors, to talk about what they can do to make rental housing and multi-housing complexes more safe. And then of course we do public events throughout the year like National Night Out, Kids Safe Saturday at Cadillac, where we're trying to get those messages out. And our goal is basically to say, we're here for you to help you any way we can, but we also want you to take ownership of your community and use these principles that will help guide you. And that's where Neighborhood Watch comes in very well. And say, these are the tools that you can use, but we need your help. And that's where, you know, when you see somebody walking late at night at 3 in the morning that's unfamiliar to you, you don't just expect that somebody else is going to call.
Right.
That you call us and let us know, and we'll come check it out. Because a lot of times what I get with that is the next day, somebody says, you know what, I heard there was some vehicle prowls in my neighborhood. Well, I saw this, but I didn't call. And I'm like, well, you should have called. And so we try to empower them with things like that.
For instances such as that, would you recommend people call 911, or if they call the non-emergency line within the city?
Either. I mean, they go to the same place. Non-emergency would be like, I'd like an officer to call me because I got information about concealed pistol license or something like that. But if somebody sees something going on that's unfamiliar, you know, somebody walking through their neighborhood late at night and they're looking in car windows or doors, just call 911.
Okay.
That way we can get an officer out there, because we have found that us responding to those types of calls, what that person may not know is they've already committed vehicle prowls, and we may not even know it.
Right.
And so we can turn around and work that backwards, and we've had success with that. So just call 911, but if it truly is a non-emergency, call the non-emergency line, and then we'll get somebody out there.
Okay, great. And you know, you were talking about benefits of citizens being proactive. Can you speak a little bit about the volunteers that we have within the police services department?
Oh yeah, they are my pride and joy. They're my program. Volunteers in police services. There are 38 individuals that donate their time, and there's really no way to repay them, but we figure it saves the police department because they're doing stuff like the mail run or handicap parking enforcement or vacation house checks. We figure on an average basis they're saving us anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 a year.
Wow.
And that's based on the statistics that is used by the National Volunteer Institute, that they figure what volunteer hours are worth. And so these people come to our Citizens Academy. They take 12 to 13 weeks out of their own time to learn about the police department, and then in addition they volunteer to help and they do more than just help the police department. As you know, they help Parks and Rec with keeping people safe at street crossings. They've helped at city events. So they've really expanded beyond just the police department. We've been able to use them for multiple purposes, but without them, simple services such as the mail run each day to the courthouse. When I started, a District 1 officer did that.
Right.
So you had an officer tied up for an hour and a half delivering, mail, and that it's amazing how beneficial that can be. And another one is handicap. We get calls all the time, people saying, we love that you're out here enforcing this, and they don't realize that it's volunteers, and we have to tell them, hey, that's our volunteers, and that's actually the only thing that a volunteer can do by state law, actually write a ticket for and endorse, is handicap parking enforcement. So we use our group for that, and we use them to maximize the effect that we can.
Yeah, and always when an officer or other staff can't be out to community events, I always see them out, which is great.
Yeah,
representing. So
that's how much I trust them.
Yeah.
There was a time when I had to be at every event, and I realized pretty quick we're talking about professional managers, engineers, housewives, which I consider a professional house manager, obviously. And so, yeah, if I can't get out there, I send them out there, and it's been totally beneficial to the department, and I believe the city.
Great, great. Well, what are some of the areas of concern that the police department is focusing on, and how can citizens, you've already spoke a little bit, but help reduce some of these concerns?
Yeah, well, right now, through our stratified policing model, we've determined that we've had an issue with shoplifting and thefts. It is amazing. Now, I'm going to play both sides of the coin here. But you would be amazed at how many people, when we post on our Facebook, when we get a lead or we have a video image of somebody, the vast majority of people are like sharing that and saying positive things. But there's a small percentage that think that why are we wasting our time investigating those? But what they don't realize is the financial impact to the businesses that shoplifting has on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis to the businesses. And also the amount of time that it takes for the police department to be involved in this. Because if the person's involved, we have to go, we have to get the tape, we have a duty to investigate it. And that's why when I see those little bit of naysayers on the Facebook saying you're making a nationwide manhunt with this picture for a shoplifter, they don't realize the grand scheme of things. It highly affects. You're paying an officer to go handle this call, then he has to take this image and he has to send it out, and then if he gets a lead, he has to investigate it. So we want to hold people accountable, and unfortunately, I got to say, it is a big majority issue right now, and our administration and our sergeants have identified that. So that is our current project. We're using everything from officers going into the stores. We've got decoy cars, and you'll never know whether it's a decoy. You'll think it's a decoy car, and what you don't realize is an officer in the store walking around.
Oh, wow.
And then we also have volunteers that go and walk around the store, and they'll walk around, and they don't contact anybody, of course, but they're just being seen. And so we're really trying to crack down on that right now, because it has seen an increase and a jump. And then, of course, vehicle prowls is always a big thing.
Sure. And do you also see that it's often repeat offenders? So you want to address
I have
that.
a stinking suspicion that a lot of these offenders are involved in other crimes, and that's why when they say it's not a big deal, it is. Not only are you causing a loss to the business, but you're causing an increase in cost of items to the general public. And then, of course, you have people that are doing this consistently over and over and over. And then you got to take into account retail theft organizations.
Sure. And you mentioned, with the winter months coming, what are some of the precautions that we can take, with holiday shopping and other scams that might be happening over the winter months?
Well, first of all, vehicle prowl is always a big thing throughout the year, but even in the winter months, because that's why we always preach our lock it or lose it. Lock your car doors, roll up your car doors, remove your valuables, and that is perfect for the winter holiday months, because people will go shopping. They'll put, if they don't have it in a trunk, they'll go out to eat, or they'll go somewhere else to shop, and they're leaving all their new valuables or their gifts right there to be open. And so we see an increase in the holidays of vehicle prowls, and in particular, people taking advantage of people leaving mass quantity of gifts that they hope to be gifts to other people.
Sure.
We also see little issues where you'll see where, people can turn around and they'll get involved with some scams, desperate people, unfortunately, desperation can come to effect at time in the winter months, and scammers and fraudulent conmen take advantage of that. So we do see some of that where people are sending money off to the Nigerian prince that they've just won $1 million from because they just found out that they're a relative and they've never been to Nigeria.
Right.
And they
Yeah.
realize. And I make a little, I'm making a little humor of that, but you'd be amazed at how many people fall for that.
Fall prey to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially during the holidays when you're
They
concerned
do
about
because
funding and
you're
budgets.
considered, or I've actually taken calls myself where individuals have lost $5,000 to $10,000 in this, and I'll tell them don't ever give any money again. And this one lady, bless her heart, called me back in 15 minutes and said, well, you're going to be mad at me, but I just sent $1,000 to this person because they said this one was real and it was for a car. And I had to break it to her heart. I'm not going to investigate this. You've willingly given your money after I've told you that this is a scam, and it's unfortunate. But then also, with the winter months coming up and weather changing, I'm sure my fire department friends would tell you major scams going on about fixing roofs and doing work around the house to cut down trees. So it's very important that if you do have anything related to that you investigate it. Call the Better Business Bureau. Research with the Secretary of State. Are their taxes paid? Do they have a license? Things like that too become pretty common in the fall and winter months.
Great. You also hear about people leaving their cars running and warming up in the mornings, and unfortunately, it's not there when they walk back out. So that's another one that I've heard.
Yeah, Washington State law does not allow you, regardless of whether it has a disabled fixture in the car, to run your car without it being occupied. State law basically says no car shall be left unattended running. And so, yes, I realize that there are features now but the law hasn't been updated yet, and it's not a super high priority for enforcement action from the police department. However, some people who don't have those features will go out and start their cars, and it's not uncommon to look on the Daily Report or hear from Kennewick that there's been a car stolen that morning. Somebody starting it. But when people complain to me about that, I say contact your legislators. I realize that the car's locked and there's no, the key is in it, or the key may not be in it, but and it can be disabled, but that's not what the law says. So I have to advise you that it's unsafe to do so. But that does happen quite a bit, especially running into stores. I'm just running real quick into the convenience mart or the grocery store. Where I really get concerned, though, is when they leave kids in there. And that is very common, where an officer will pull into a parking lot and there will be a kid in there. And because they don't want to take the kid out of the heat, and they may have maybe an older kid that can kind of watch the kid, but it's still not very safe. What if somebody was to come up and break in and take the car?
Right. Those are good lessons to be aware of. So what do you want the citizens to know about Richland Police Department?
Wow, there's a lot, and we can't cover it in 15 minutes. One, that we're a proactive agency that believes, and when we see criminal trends, that we're going to go after those to help solve those, that we want the community members to be partners with us. We want them to call us and tell us about issues going on in their community, and then we can have the community services officer come out, or maybe a traffic issue that's going on. We'll get the traffic unit involved. And lastly, it kind of goes along with the partnership, but when we have community events, we want you guys to come out. We don't put these on for show. We're doing them because we want people coming out to walk up to us and say, I'm not having issues in my neighborhood, but in my I used to live in Phoenix, Arizona, for example, and they had this program, and have you guys thought of this? We're always willing to be open to new ideas, but just that we're working for you. Unfortunately, little things, people think that we just stop people and write them tickets because it's a great revenue fund for the city, and little do they know that we receive very little of that. The majority goes to the state, but we do take enforcement action or education. Chief likes to say we prefer education first if we can, to alter, because what's the top 3 complaints in the city? Almost every survey: traffic, crime, and quality of life issues such as code enforcement and stuff. So if we're working in an area and we're having a problem like we are right now in George with accidents, we're going to work it. And there may be a time, but understand that we will usually always try to do that through education first, get the word out first, so that you're not following too closely or speeding or
Right.
using your cell phone.
Right, right.
Know that we're here to work with you, I guess.
Right, and safety is your number one priority of
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
citizens here, so.
Yeah. Our products are safety and service.
Right.
That's our products that we go by, and so we're always trying to deliver that in the best way we can.
Thank you, Rick. We appreciate you being here with us today. And stay tuned, and we'll be back with an update from the Richland Fire Department. Welcome back. We're here with Deputy Fire Marshal Keith Ramsay. Thanks for being here, Keith.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, can you give us a little overview of the Richland Fire Department?
Sure. Richland Fire Department, we have currently 4 fire stations that are strategically placed throughout the city. The reason we put them in certain locations, for example, the new Station 74
Right.
at Queensgate, is because our community is growing, and for us, our response times are a key element of us providing the best possible service for our citizens. So we are actually, for future planning, looking at expanding to 5 and 6 fire stations so that we can better improve our response times.
Right, and accommodate for that growth, right?
Yep,
That's happening.
and with each station you've got what we call a jump crew, and that's 3 dedicated personnel that jump between an ambulance if it's a medical call or one of the many fire trucks and different types of fire trucks that we have depending upon what type of fire it is. So
Wow.
by doing that, you're able to provide a quick response for the different types of calls that come in.
And be able to perform the service if they need an EMT or a paramedic, that they can be there.
More than half of our department are all paramedic certified, and that's a much higher level of medical training that we can provide to the citizens.
That's great. So what does the fire department offer to help citizens with home safety in terms of prevention? I mean, prevention is the key, right?
Yeah, the Richland Fire Department stresses community risk reduction. So we've several times now kind of looked out into the community, and you see those things that are happening on an often basis. And then you identify the problem and you figure out a way to mitigate that problem. You know, if you've got a burning fire, that's an easy one for us. We
Right.
put the wet stuff on the red stuff. That's the old joke. When it comes to community risk reduction and prevention, there's a variety of different programs that we've started over several decades. One of them is a simple home safety survey. A lot of times people will move into the area. They're new to the city of Richland, maybe new to this particular home, and they're not quite sure where to put those smoke alarms if they don't have them or what type. And so through a home safety survey, we can help them assess those problems in their particular residence or business and help mitigate those.
Yeah, that's great. You know, a lot of the homes in Richland were built around the 1950s. So do you see that a lot of them are out of code for fire safety?
I don't know if we see a lot of them that are out of code necessarily, specifically, but we do see a lot of problems where people are just not being safe.
Right.
A good example is this time of year, heaters are kicking on, people are
Right.
starting to use their wood stoves, but they're forgetting that, you know, maybe that baseboard heater was covered with clothing or combustible materials throughout the summer, and now the thermostats are kicking on. So that's where we come in. We help remind people that you need to, you know, check your smoke alarms, replace the batteries, make sure that your heaters are clear and that you're ready for winter.
That's great. So moving into kind of businesses and new construction, what fire prevention requirements does the city have in place for that?
The City of Richland has adopted all of the international fire codes,
Okay.
and we also follow the National Fire Protection Agency, or NFPA. These are code books that are a mile thick,
Right.
full of all kinds of very specific code that they use also along with the building department in the City of Richland. We work very close with them, and the codes really overlap each other. They're designed to
Kind of support.
yes.
travel.
So if you're building something brand new in the City of Richland and you have the inspectors, the fire inspectors, and the building inspectors, they're going to follow these codes. There are things as simple as, for this type of building, you're going to need this number of exits. We need a sprinkler system, sprinkler system in that building, a fire alarm system, and those types of things.
Okay.
So coming to the City of Richland and building is a good thing because you have all that support through your building department and the fire department, and the residents can be rest assured that there's not a lot of hokey stuff happening.
Right,
with
right.
their
Everybody's
construction.
on the same page,
Exactly.
and it's a smooth transition. That's great. What are some of the areas of concern that the fire department is focusing on, how citizens can reduce or address some of these concerns? You hear about some of the potting soil fires that people don't realize that if they put a cigarette out in potting soil, it can actually start fire.
Believe it or not, that is one of the biggest growing concerns across the nation right now, is people smoking outside. I think they're doing that more and more now, and then extinguishing their cigarettes in a potted plant. So most of the time the plant's long gone,
Right.
but they still have that pot out on their balcony in a lot of apartments, and they'll extinguish a cigarette. Well, the misnomer is that is dirt, and it is not dirt. It is potting soil, and that material is made of flammable combustible materials.
Right.
The potting soil can, over a very, very long period of time, it can smolder. So the person puts the cigarette out, and it can be hours and hours and hours later. Usually a little wind kicks up and kind of, blows on the potting soil and gets that going.
Right.
And we've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of these fires caused after it catches, and then maybe catches the siding on fire or some combustible material that's near that pot. And there have been entire businesses burned to the ground in the city of Richland. I cannot count the number of apartment fires that we've seen on the balconies where the siding catches on fire, and thank goodness for sprinkler fire protection systems, because they a lot of times will put them out. But it's a very serious issue, and we recommend that you use some type of metal container that does not have potting soil in it. Use water, non-combustible type materials where you can extinguish those cigarette butts.
Okay, that's a good tip. And as far as the winter months go, we talked a little bit about putting things on heaters, but what are some other things that people should be aware of in the winter months?
Right now you're kicking on your heaters and you're starting your wood stoves. A lot of people have wood stoves. They want to make sure that they've done some maintenance prior to that. We've seen birds' nests built in chimneys. That can be a real problem. Knowing how your system works, a lot of times people will forget or not know how their flue system works in their particular chimney.
Chimneys.
And then we see a lot of chimney fires because of soot and creosote build up over years and years and years, and now we kick on our fire and the neighbor calls 911 because they see flames shooting out of your chimney. This can cause a lot of smoke and water damage because we need to extinguish it in your home, so it's better to do some preventative maintenance prior to you kicking on those wood stoves for the season.
Sure. What about Christmas trees and Christmas tree lights? Do we see a growing number of instances with fires started?
Yeah, the Christmas trees, the live trees in particular, of course, we always recommend that you buy them fresh. Make sure that the end has been cut off. You properly water them. A lot of times they will, especially when they're right off the lot, they drink a lot of water. And we see a lot of these trees drying out because of the dry, humidity, in the home, especially with the wood stoves.
Right.
And they get so dried out, and then the faulty Christmas tree lights that we've kept around for 30 years might, ignite that. I can remember one particular very devastating house fire very early in my career that was caused by a dried out Christmas tree. And there was fatalities in that fire, and I'll never forget it. So it is one of our big pushes for the holiday season.
Sure.
Either use an artificial tree or make sure that you care for your tree properly.
Yes, I love a live tree, but we're always very aware and careful about not leaving the lights on when we leave the home, and making sure that our tree is well fed.
Exactly. And making sure that you have working smoke alarms in your house. If something like this does happen, that is your early warning system. It's the only thing that's going to wake you up in the middle of the night, alert your family, and so that you can get out safely.
Right. Safety is the number one.
That's exactly right.
So what would you like the citizens of Richland to know about our Richland Fire and Emergency Services Department?
Our department is constantly working on new ways to get a safety message and protect our citizens. So what I want people to remember is that we're not a government organization that's not full of a bunch of moms and dads and hardworking folks that just go to work and put out a fire and hold your hand on occasion. We're constantly thinking about how we can better produce safety programs and prevention programs, how we can get the information out to the public, and how we can better serve our community, because it's the one that we live in and it's the one we care for.
Right. One thing that I'm really impressed with the Richland Fire Department is their foundation, in which they really support so many different programs, and there was a second harvest event that occurred. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the Richland Fire Department is comprised of, like I say, men and women, moms and dads, ourselves, and our union, Local 1052, has a community outreach program, and we strive to, try to get out into the community and raise money, raise funds, and support things like everything from Little League baseball teams to community food drive programs. Coats for Kids is one that we're unrolling right now, and just different things like that. And that's more of the community outreach side of things versus fighting fires and EMS.
Yeah, I just appreciate your commitment to also furthering the quality of life here in Richland, so I think that's a really good thing to point out too. Well, I'd like to thank my guests today, Keith Ramsay and Rick Kane, for talking with us about how safe our city really is. And if you have any questions, you can visit the city's website or be sure and like the police or fire department's Facebook pages at the link at the bottom of the screen. Thanks for joining us on City Corner. I'm Hollie Logan.
Students, let's begin. Well, what have we learned?
Never leave your car doors unlocked?
Always lock your car and take the keys with you.
Nah, keep the garage door closed.
Good. Anything else? Yes.
That was my car.
Moving on.
Lock it or lose it. Bum ba dum bum 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 bum.
You're watching City View TV, your Richland community connection.